At the Orange County Community Foundation, we believe in transforming our community's heartfelt intention into greater impact for good. By helping donors find the causes they love, we strengthen our community. We lead the way with bold solutions, combining giving strategy and community intelligence. Leveraging our generous donors and passionate partners, we amplify the power of giving. Together, we are helping to build an Orange County where all have the opportunity to thrive. OCCF is a proud underwriter of community programming and OC World. OC World is made possible by the generous contributions of the Marisla Foundation, the Keith and Judy Swain Family Foundation, Orange County Community Foundation, the University of California, Irvine, Socorro and Ernesto Vasquez Family Foundation, Crevier Family Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gaddi Vasquez, guest host for OC World. Today we take a closer look at issues that strike at the heart of every community: crime, public safety, and the evolving role of prosecutors in our justice system. These matters shape not only how laws are enforced, but how trust is built or lost between the public and those sworn to serve it. Joining us is Todd Spitzer, the elected district attorney of Orange County. His career spans decades in public service as a county supervisor, state assemblyman, and longtime prosecutor. As the county's chief law enforcement officer, District Attorney Spitzer has become a central and often outspoken figure in California's criminal justice conversation. Known for his strong positions on crime and his advocacy for victims' rights, he has also drawn attention and debate over his approach to criminal justice reform and high-profile controversies during his tenure. In this conversation, we'll discuss the challenges and the responsibilities of leading a prosecutor's office in one of the most populous counties in the nation, and what his leadership signals for the future of justice in Orange County. District Attorney Spitzer, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate that very much.
Ambassador, great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you've held roles at the state legislative level. You've been a county supervisor, prosecutor, district attorney, and perhaps forgotten by some, school board member in Brea, where it all started.
Just like Jerry Brown, he was a community college justice.
Exactly.
Right.
So of all the roles that you have had, most rewarding, most challenging, most difficult, where do you find those spaces in your career?
Actually, I think the two most rewarding things I did had nothing to do with elective office: being a high school English teacher and being a reserve police officer. I think those two things have shaped me greatly with all the work I do now. I mean, I've been so honored to have some very, very important elected offices, and I've been super honored, right, to hold those positions. And now I represent as a DA the safest large county in California. And I wake up every day just trying to hold on as steadfastly as I can to kind of that position, because today in California, it is not easy to remain safe.
And so, as you've developed as a leader, head of an agency, a large organization like the District Attorney's Office in Orange County, what are some of the guiding principles that have been part of your leadership style, the kind of principles that have guided you in some of the most critical and key decisions that you had to make as DA, as a county supervisor, as a legislator?
I think it all comes down to justice. Whether I was a teacher, I taught migrant farm worker plays to my 10th grade students because the books that were part of the curriculum that were established had no meaning to the kids that I was teaching in East Los Angeles in the inner city, right? When I was a police officer, I remember I worked with other officers. I was part of LAPD for 10 years, who, when they made an arrest, it was like so critical to them. And I would always tell them, like, we either have the evidence or we don't have the evidence, right? I mean, we don't make these things up. When things come our way, it's our job to deal with them, but to make sure, and to me, It's just a very, very stringent interpretation of what justice is. And I think today in the United States, especially with respect to prosecutorial agencies, I think there's a big question of whether or not prosecutors are independent or whether or not they're working at the behest of, say, the President of the United States, a governor, or somebody else. I mean, our Attorney General here, Mr. Bonta, is an activist Attorney General. Ms. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, there's some danger that she might be an activist Attorney General. So to me, I don't want anybody to question my role as a district attorney. It's not a partisan position. I've held partisan office. I understand what that means. My job is to call balls and strikes and to stay right down the middle. I don't want anybody to say Todd Spitzer is just a tool of this special interest. I want everybody to say, hey, we may agree with him from time to time or disagree, but we can always say he's fair and he's always trying to do the right thing.
Orange County is increasingly a ethnically diverse community where diversity is obviously all around us and growing and expanding and will continue to be on that kind of a trajectory. How does what you just articulated play into how you communicate with the various communities of Orange County?
Well, I mean, look at when I was a high school teacher in 1984, East Los Angeles. I grew up in East Los Angeles. My family had a furniture store, Spitzer Brothers Furniture on Whittier Boulevard, just west of Atlantic, right next to the 710. Their store was gutted in 1968 during the riots during Vietnam, when minority communities were treated disparately, that people of color were shipped off to war, when people that looked more like me went off to college and were exempt from the draft. And I grew up in that community and I saw what could happen when people are completely disenfranchised from their government and from the establishment. Education is the key to everything. Nelson Mandela is the clearest example. I mean, he was in prison for decades, right? But when he got out, he became the president of his country. Education is the equalizer for everything. It allows you to decide if I want to stay in a ghetto or if I want to leave a ghetto. You know, do I want to take advantage of opportunities or do I want to pay back the community from which I come from? And so I just strongly believe, having been a school board member, Brea Linda School Board, high school English teacher, and then a long line of educators, that everything I do is going to understand and take that position, that even our administration of justice, we're always going to look at the whole person, the defendant, and try to come up with an appropriate, just disposition based on their circumstances.
And so one of the slogans of your last campaign for re-election suggested, and I quote, no LA in OC. So
greatly misunderstood.
Tell us about that. What was your intended messaging in that slogan? I thought it was rather catchy, but
no, and I got a lot of compliments from people in my opposing party. Okay, they thought it was super clever and very effective. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like when Forbes ran for president, he just had flat tax, and everybody, I can still remember that decades later, right? We needed something to make the point immediately that Orange County is different, but for the right reason. And I was contrasted at that time with George Gascon, who was the Los Angeles district attorney. He has a very different viewpoint of what a prosecutor should be. We had George Gascon in LA. We had the DA, Chesa Bodine of San Francisco. We had these, what they call progressive prosecutors who were getting elected in all these big metropolitan areas. And here I was representing a big area, kind of the lone voice. There was a movement in California supported by the legislature to change how we did public safety in California. And I said basically over my dead body. So we put up billboards at all the entrances in Orange County. We made it clear, hey, we are still going to do things by a more traditional standard. I'm still open, and we can talk about this, all the things I am doing to be much more responsive to what I think is important, people addicted to drugs, mental health, things like that, in terms of our criminal justice system. When I started in this district attorney's office in 1990, okay, so a long time ago, 35 years ago, we basically locked people up, threw away the key, and never looked back. That is not how we do things today. the slogan was not, I don't like LA. I grew up there. I mean, I was a teacher there. I was a cop there. My roots are there. It had nothing to do with not respecting Los Angeles. It was a reminder we don't want our district attorney to be like that district attorney.
Obviously, the voters voted in Los Angeles. They made a change in the district attorney's leadership. Are you encouraged by the change in Los Angeles?
George Gascon would never even return a phone call of mine to me. Nathan and I speak all the time, and I would say we're very good friends. I respect the fact that he has a different community that he represents, and he's got to do things differently than I do because Orange County tends to be very supportive of law enforcement.
Following on that a little bit, do you feel like the district attorneys in California and you as a leader in that category of public service, do you feel like you have a good working relationship with the legislature? Is it mixed? Is it challenging? Are we making progress?
Politics is based upon relationships, but it's based upon perceived power. It's really basic, and it hasn't changed since time immemorial, okay? Who has the power? Who's trying to get the power? Who's trying to keep power? The district attorneys were shunned by the legislature, that we were being railroaded on every policy front. That's why so many DAs got elected on a progressive platform. But once we passed Prop 36, suddenly people were taking our meetings, they were listening to us, and our bills were gaining traction like before they would never make it out of committee. And we earned that trust because we went to the voters directly and we got 70% of the vote every county. So the legislators cannot ignore us, and we've seen a significant shift in how they talk about public safety.
As Orange County continues to grow, continues to change and evolve, what would you identify as the district attorney as the most urgent public safety challenges that you're facing in concert with the law enforcement community? What are the biggest challenges you think we are seeing in Orange County that are developing, that are taking hold?
The aftermath of the pandemic and our civil unrest that we saw manifested in our big urban cores, shootings, rioting, police being assaulted, police shooting journalists with non-lethal weapons, people were getting shot and killed by the police. It was horrible. And the aftermath of that civil unrest, it was, in my mind, it was purposeful to turn the country against the police. There's been a huge impact as a result. Recruitments for police officers are down. Retirements are up. Recruitment for prosecutors are way down. I have more vacancies in this agency for prosecutors. We're actually, I had to beg and use every resource I had to get hired here 35 years ago, right? There was a line out the door for people who wanted to be DAs. It's not like that anymore. University of California, Irvine, which is right here in Orange County, I'm not making this up. They literally indoctrinate their students not to become prosecutors. And so we just had a recruitment fair where we're asking law students to come and meet all the DAs, and we're talking about our profession and our craft and why you should become a prosecutor. We never had to do that before. It's a whole new world for law enforcement. My big concern is that this needs to be lifted again as a reputable profession. And we need good people, smart people to want to come into law enforcement.
Well, I'm glad you raised that because actually it was something I was going to probe a little bit later in our conversation here is whether or not the district attorney's office here in Orange County or in California across the state is still an attractive place to seek and find employment as an attorney, as a lawyer, wants to be a prosecutor. So of those who do, what do you find in your experience as the qualities, the traits of individuals that do want to engage and serve as prosecutors in the district attorney's office? What kind of qualities do you look for in the individuals that come to your office?
I want people who are going to fight for victims. I want people, remember, we don't represent a client. Our client's the people of the state of California. It's a very, very esoteric, nebulous kind of concept. So we don't answer to a client. We get to go into court and do what we think is the right thing in every single case. Most lawyers in private practice have Before they can do anything, they got to check with their client. We don't do that. Now, we check in with victims under Marcy's Law to make sure they understand what we're doing, but sometimes we're at odds even with our victims in terms of an outcome. I look for people who want to be trial lawyers, people who live and breathe courtrooms, that they're comfortable in a courtroom, they're confident, and that they're good in front of people. Because when you argue in front of a jury, you better have your act together, because jurors can see right through anything they perceive as not genuine. I want people who are respectful, that I don't care if you like that judge or not. I want you to be respectful for the office and the position. And I want you to be a stellar member of the community. I want you to have respect for how good we have it here. I want you to fight for how good Orange County is every single day. I want you to volunteer in your community. I encourage people to run for office. When I was here 35 years ago, and I told them I wanted to become a volunteer police officer, they're like, you can't do that. When I told them I was going to run for school board, they said, you can't do that. This place was you can't do any of those things. You just need to be a DA. I encourage so many people in this office to go out and be their best, explore, and give back to their community.
And in that vein, what would you describe, or what have you found in the course of your service as DA and prior experience, the most misunderstood aspects about the DA's office in terms of the role and function? Because, it gets glamorized on television. You see all these shows with district attorneys and whatnot, and you draw some conclusions. But what are some of the things that you think the public needs to understand about the role of the DA in Orange County and across the state?
I think the public perceives from a lot of TV that we'll do anything to get a conviction, that we'll even cheat, that we'll hide evidence to get a conviction. This office has gotten into, and I'm living with the aftermath of serious problems from that kind of attitude. There was a day when we did things very, very differently in this office. Now you have body-worn camera, right? I mean, it's a whole different world. And so there's way more accountability. But I think the public, and we see this when we're picking juries now, jurors will say unequivocally they don't trust the police. They don't trust anything that police officer says under oath on the stand. That sentiment. So when I left the legislature and I came back to this office in 2008 and I started doing jury trials again, I was flabbergasted how much change there had been from public sentiment when I was picking juries in the 90s to what happened in the 2000s.
Human trafficking, cybercrime, gangs, environment, public integrity, corruption, all those things, hate crimes. Of those that I've just recited, are there any trends within those areas, or maybe areas I haven't mentioned, that are of growing concern to you as you try to resource and source the assets that you have to be able to deal with these kinds of evolving areas of criminal behavior that's happening?
Cybercrime is the new frontier, and neither our office or the FBI, the feds, have significant enough resources to deal with all the theft, all the stealing. I mean, we see the smash and grabs on TV. There's exponentially more crimes that are happening through people's computers and through their bank accounts and through their credit and through their recordation of documents on property. People are getting their things stolen blind. Money out of accounts, houses being embezzled unbeknownst to the owner because there was a recorded document or a transfer. We are fighting every single day to stay up on fraud and white-collar crime. And people who think about this, right, in terms of generational change, I was speaking to some seniors the other day, and I'm like, do you remember the first microwave? It had that big dial on the front and the big handle, right? Nothing was digital. And then, remember, we had black and white TVs, then we got color. Then we had, Paul, the big screen with 3 lights in front, and if you looked at that screen today, it would make you dizzy. It would be so blurry, right? We have evolved. That's what's happened with the computers. And our seniors today now didn't grow up with any of that. And so they are so vulnerable. And I feel very sorry for them because they were raised to have trust in mankind and to think that people were kind and honest. And that is not the landscape today. We have foreign actors, China, Russia, Iran, who are coming in here and doing all kinds of infiltration into our computers.
What about hate crimes? I know that has been a topic top of mind for you. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I won't tolerate hate here in the county. And look, I'm a conservative, right? But I don't care who you love. I'm not using this office as a platform to say, I don't approve of your lifestyle. If you're a victim of hate because of your lifestyle choices, I'm going to fight to protect your choice to have that lifestyle. I don't want people to grow up in this county feeling that law enforcement is taking sides. We are going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law anybody who's a victim of hate. And we just recently sent somebody to prison for 38 years who had 2 prior strikes for hate. He had a swastika tattooed on his chest. He was an absolute hater. And I went to court on that case with my prosecutor and made it unequivocally clear to the court, that's a hater. That guy needs to die in prison. And that sounds kind of harsh when I kind of sit back to the untrained ear. I can be pretty harsh because I look at certain people and certain conduct and I make the decision and I'm the elected DA. You don't have a right to be in society anymore.
And on the subject of victims' rights, you've been a strong advocate for many, many years. How does the commitment translate into action? What would you point to in that regard?
So I have been a victims' rights advocate. I was a statewide campaign manager for Marcy's Law in 2008. That put the Victims' Bill of Rights into Article 1, Section 28 of our California Constitution. But it's an oddity and a paradox when you're the prosecutor and you're the DA, because as much as I advocate for victims, we can't always do justice the way the victim believes justice should be achieved. We can't make them whole when they have serious injuries. We can't always get them the money and the reparations they deserve for the harm that occurred to them. We can't bring back their loved ones, right? Sometimes a judge will undercut us and give a very de minimis plea bargain over our objection. And we have to explain to the victim that the judge has that prerogative, right? So everybody in this office is required to be a victim advocate, but everybody in this office also knows we don't represent the victim per se.
And shifting gears just a little bit, because we can't have a conversation without at least talking about the jailhouse informant scandal, which casts a long shadow over Orange County's justice system for some time. You've established a conviction integrity unit, and I'm just curious, and I know the public is probably curious, new policies, new practices, can we faithfully believe that this matter is closed, or does it remain work in progress?
So let me give some context about an informant. People are pejoratively referred to as snitches, right? We can't solve a lot of crime without flipping somebody like a co-defendant, somebody close to the person we've charged with a crime. Sometimes we have to make a deal to prove the crime against the heavier perpetrator. People understand that. They see that in the movies all the time, right? People work as a snitch to work off time, things like that. That's an inevitable and an important part of our work. It's probably the most distasteful part of our work because these people tend to be so untruthful, highly motivated for personal reasons to get a lighter deal, and very untrustworthy presumptively. So if we're going to use a snitch in this office now, I'm the only one that can approve it. It used to be anybody could approve it under the former administration. I put a stop to that. I said, these people are so distasteful, so untrustworthy. You got to come to me and convince me why we're so desperate in this case to solve it or prosecute it that we need a snitch. We have an informant manual, so all these policies are written out. I'm under investigation. I've worked out a deal with the United States Department of Justice because of the illegal use of informants. I'm working my way out of that. I inherited that. It's been here my entire 6 years so far, almost 7 now, as DA. So it's an ugly part of the work we do, but it could be necessary. And I'll give you this one quick example. If I have no evidence and I have a little girl who's buried somewhere breathing out of a straw, and the only way I can get her out alive is to make a deal with somebody who will give me information, however untrustworthy it might be, I might make that deal. And that's why the people elect me. I mean, I make very important decisions, whether we seek the death penalty, whether we don't, what an appropriate disposition in a case is, whether we should file charges or not, whether we should convene a grand jury, whether we pursue an indictment, whether I prosecute Andrew Doe in conjunction with the federal government. My former colleague in law school and my former colleague on the Board of Supervisors. It just gave me chills telling you that. I make very, very heavy decisions on almost a daily basis. And they weigh very heavily on me. And so that's part of the job that I was elected to. And sometimes the weight of the world feels like it's on my shoulders to make the decisions that, one, I told you, to get justice, to do the right thing, and to make decisions that I know when I reflect on it, hopefully 20 years from now, I will have made the exact same decision.
Well, thanks for that insight. Now, to the personal side, given the intensity of the work that you have, the organization that you lead, so what does the District Attorney of Orange County do to relax, to break away from the weight and the burden of all that you're responsible for? What do you do to bring peace and serenity to your life when you have the opportunities to do so?
So I'm kind of like a workout fiend, right? I do Orange Theory Fitness. That's an hour intense workout. I do Pilates. I do yoga. I do all kinds of like health things, barometric pressure. I go into chambers to deal with healing and things like that. And I have a deep religious belief. I mean, that probably of all the things I do, sitting in church with my family and getting grounded again and trying to understand my place in the universe. At the end of the day, we are just minor players in our world. And the biggest danger I've found over 35 years of holding office is when people like me think we're actually who we are in these elected positions. I'm just grateful to hold this position, and there'll be somebody after me, just like there were people before me. The world will survive while I'm here. The world will survive while I'm gone. And I don't have all this self-importance that the only way that we can be safe in Orange County and the only way we can be good in California is because of me. Like, the day you have that kind of self-reflection is the day you no longer should hold these offices.
Well, District Attorney Todd Spitzer, thank you for joining us today. And thank you for your service on many different levels, but in particular for the job that you are currently carrying out on behalf of the people of Orange County. And thank you for watching OC World, Orange County's only nonprofit multimedia company.